this episode of Real History Horror Tales, I will be talking about the true and gruesome history of Thanksgiving and how it came to be. As you all might know, Thanksgiving here in the US is traditionally a time for family and food. American school children typically learn that the tradition dates back to the Pilgrims, who helped establish Plymouth Colony in 1620 in what is now Massachusetts. As the story goes, friendly American Indian locals swooped in to teach the struggling colonists how to survive in what the Europeans called the New World. Then everyone got together to celebrate with a feast in 1621. Thanksgiving 2021 would mark the 400th anniversary of that first American Thanksgiving. But in reality, Thanksgiving feasts predate Plymouth, and the feast celebrated that day was tedious. The real story behind the holiday is so dark, in fact, that some people are rethinking how they celebrate the holiday, or whether they should celebrate at all. Hello guys, and happy November 21st, 2021. It is 12 a.m. So I'm recording this on a Sunday. But my Thanksgiving special, since Thanksgiving is just right around the corner. And I'm doing a Thanksgiving special on Real History Horror Tales on this series, episode 1. And I mean, y'all already guessed it. It's an episode about Thanksgiving. The real macabre history behind Thanksgiving. So I hope y'all had a great weekend so far. I hope everything is well. Kind of curious on how everybody's celebrating this Thanksgiving. Everything's pretty much back to normal. Stay safe out there though. Just in general. So let's get cracking. So everybody thinks that the Plymouth Thanksgiving of 1621 was the first, but in reality it really wasn't. This was in settlers in Berkeley Hundred, town, state, whatever you want to call it. It's now Virginia. They celebrated their arrival with a Thanksgiving as far back as 1619, so just a couple of years before the Plymouth Thanksgiving feast. And this is according to the National Geographic. Though the Washingtonian reported the meal was probably a little more than just some oysters and ham thrown together. Nothing too out there. But decades before that, Spanish settlers and members of the Siloy tribe broke bread in Florida with salted pork, garbanzo beans, and a mass way back in 1565, and this is according to the National Park Service. I do want to say I apologize for any names of tribes or any names in this episode that I do get wrong. I want to apologize in advance. They are names I am not familiar with, and I've read everything I'm reading right now, and I just could not figure out how to really pronounce it. So I'm gonna do my best. Our modern definition of Thanksgiving, it revolves around eating turkey. But this was more of an occasion for religious observance in past centuries. The Pilgrims would most likely consider their sober 1623 day of prayer the first actual Thanksgiving. And this is per the History of Massachusetts blog. Um, Others pinpoint in 1637 as the true origin of Thanksgiving, since the Massachusetts Bay Colony's governor, John Winthrop, declared a day to celebrate colonial soldiers who had just slaughtered hundreds of Pequot men, women, and children in what is now Mystic, Connecticut. Think about that, people. This is stuff that is left out when we learn about Thanksgiving in school. All this is left out, and I'm here to tell y'all how it was really like. But regardless, the popular telling of the initial harvest festival is what lived on, and this is all thanks to Abraham Lincoln. You guessed it. The enduring holiday has also nearly erased from our collective memory what happened between the Wampanoag and the English a generation later. But peace didn't last. Massasoit, the Wampanoag paramount chief, allied with the English settlers after Plymouth was established and fought with the newcomers against the French and other local tribes. But the alliance became strained over time, and as thousands more English colonists moved to Plymouth, taking over more land, authorities asserted control over most aspects of Wampanoag life, according to historic contact, Indian people and colonists in today's northeastern United States. So there was a study published in the journal Ordinary Science Reviews estimated that disease had already reduced the New England indigenous population by 90% in 1620, by 90%. The Wampanoag continued to die from what the colonists called Indian fever, an unknown disease brought by early European settlers. How true that is, I mean, this is way back. Yeah, so who knows if that's accurate or if they just try to cover something up. But by the time Massasoit's son, Metacomet, known to the English as King Philip, inherited leadership, relations had frayed. His men were executed for the murder of the Pankipog interpreter and Christian convert John Sesamar, sparking King Philip's War. Wampanoag warriors responded with raids, and the New England Confederation of Colonies declared war in 1675. Yeah, and as y'all guessed it, the war was bloody and devastating. And in an article published in the Historical Journal of Massachusetts, the Montclair State University professor Robert E. Cray Jr. said the death toll could have been up to 30% of the English population and half of the Native Americans in New England. So yeah, pretty bloody. Metacomet was beheaded and dismembered, according to It Happened in Rhode Island. And colonists impaled his head on a spike to display for 25 years. They displayed Metacomet's head. 25 years. What pride. The war was just one of a series of brutal but dimly remembered early conflicts between Native Americans and colonists in New England, New York, and Virginia. And this holiday's dark past, it's had some people rethinking Thanksgiving. A recently renewed focus on racial justice in the U.S. has some people saying it's time to reevaluate the meaning and celebration of Thanksgiving. Teachers, professors, and Native Americans have told the New York Times that they were rethinking the holiday that has marginalized the U.S.'s violence and cruelty against Native Americans, giving it names like Takesgiving and the Thanksgiving Massacre. I haven't heard of either of those. If y'all have, let me know in the comments. Well, that's interesting. And the reflections on Thanksgiving are not new. According to the New York Post, the United American Indians of New England have been publicly mourning on Thanksgiving for decades. Frank James, an Equinaw Wampanoag activist who helped establish a National Day of Mourning in 1970, called the Wampanoags' welcoming of the English settlers perhaps our biggest mistake, the Washington Post reports. On the National Day of Mourning, Native Americans gather in Plymouth, Massachusetts for a day of remembrance. Prayers and speeches take place accompanied by beating drums before participants march through the Plymouth Historic District. Participants in National Day of Mourning honor Native ancestors and the struggle of Native peoples to survive today. The commemorating plaque says, in part, it is a day of remembrance and spiritual connection, as well as a protest of racism and oppression which Native Americans continue to experience. And there you have it, people. Pretty much the story, the true story behind Thanksgiving. And I mean, again, it's stuff they don't teach us in school for obvious reasons. I don't know if I really want to be reading that stuff in middle school or even high school. But, I mean, it's a tradition, yeah, cruel history. I don't condone violence. I never will, never have. I don't believe in just violence. It just fascinates me how people want to solve everything with violence and just take advantage of other people. That's not cool. But I mean, not everybody thinks alike. There's people that think violence solves issues, big dramatic issues, and that's just the world, not just today's world. We look at today's world and don't really look at what really occurred in the past, which was a lot more dark from everything I've been reading. I love history, so I've studied a lot of history during my high school years, even my college years. I was studying history on my own, and right now I am. It's just a lot of darkness, and it's stuff that, you look at today, and today is much more peaceful than what it was back in the 1600s, 400 years ago, 500 years ago, even 200 years ago. We've come a long ways, and just we don't see that obviously because it was such a long time ago that all those events happened, and plagues. There's so many plagues also, not just with this virus we're dealing with. So much. The history is really dark. Medieval times. Y'all should really look into that if y'all are curious. I will be doing more series episodes on history. This is the first one of many. The Thanksgiving one, considering we are just a few days away from Thanksgiving. I'll be uploading this here shortly, probably right now. To YouTube, but hit that like button, subscribe. Let me know what y'all want me to talk about more, what issues, anything paranormal. I'm here to talk about it all. So you guys take care. Y'all have a very blessed Thanksgiving, and try not to get into many family arguments this Thanksgiving. Make everything peaceful. Don't be like the Plymouth colonists. Bye now.